Welcome, everyone. The business continuity mindset, a new way of thinking. It is my pleasure to introduce today's panel moderator, Tony Thomas. You might recognize him from this morning's sessions. Tony is the VP of Strategy at ConnectWise, where he is responsible for executing its ambition to be the most innovative, trusted, and delightful company in the industry. I'll let him introduce the panel, and I'll introduce Tony.
Okay, I'm back. Appreciate you guys spending some time this morning listening to our idea of blast zone engineering, the business continuity mindset. I know I'm standing in between you and the bar and parties tonight and stuff like that, so we'll try to keep it on point and lively as possible. Okay, so these next group of people that I'm going to introduce that are going to walk with us through their journey of engaging and serving the community have a wealth of experience. So the first person I'm going to bring out is Mike Goldberg, my colleague. Come on out, Mike. Mike has spent over a decade. He spent over a decade really kind of working in service to the managed service provider community. He's had a long history with ConnectWise and our 30-year journey on this route. All right, the second panelist that I'm going to introduce is James, say it, Slaby. James Slaby. The Czech version of it is?
In old country, they say Slaby.
Slaby. James obviously has a lot of history with the industry as well, over 8+ years, serving the community, and a lot of those years have been spent at Acronis. And finally, really kind of our headliner, Esteban Delgado, please come out onto the stage. So now Esteban actually has 30 years of experience running his business.
Since I was 12.
So he's got a lot of stories to share and habits to help you guys build. So I'm going to ask our panelists some questions, and then I want to open it up to questions from the audience that you may have of them as well. And we'll close it out with some tips and tricks that I think will be valuable for the business continuity mindset, right? Okay, so Mike Goldberg, talk to us a little bit about what a transformative partnership means when we're speaking about business continuity.
All right, so from the ConnectWise lens, I'll start at a higher level and kind of go down. So for those that are familiar with ConnectWise, those that are not, ConnectWise is one mission statement. If there was one singular mission statement, it is dedicated to partner success. So when we look at driving success, that's growth for you, that's profitability, how do we achieve that and that maximum outcome? It started with us looking internally at how we are divided in terms of our organization and how we provide help to our partners. And we have an account management team. We've had it for years and years, and they are dedicated in terms of the business alignment to our business and your business. But in looking at this next outcome in terms of selling with, selling through, and a sort of a co-managed environment where we're helping, we realized we needed a layer deeper. And as of last year, we launched a ConnectWise partner program dedicated specifically around cybersecurity, with the idea of eventually expanding it. That allowed us to hire a specific team. There is now 84 on that team, what we call partner development managers. They are dedicated solely to the growth and working with our partners and expanding and understanding kind of what the foundational aspects of a security business would look like, what that stack should look like, how do you develop it, how do you sell it, how do you approach it. The next iteration, obviously, in that for us is business continuity. There is a tremendous alignment between what security, business continuity, or backup disaster recovery looks like. And we have expanded that. We have just started to expand it. We currently have over 2,000 partners in the program overall. One of the amazing outcomes that we did see is the partners in the program that have identified and looking for more assistance with marketing help, sales help. They are growing at a 31% clip in terms of the growth of that security platform that they've hired, more so than any other of our partners. And it's been an amazing investment and an amazing aspect of what we've been able to develop.
So I think a great way to kind of summarize that a little bit is when we think about a transformative partnership, you have to start with the apex of success. You can't guess at what a partner's success looks like. You actually have to be an extension of their business, working hand in hand with them to be able to deliver on that type of success, right? And I think that a co-sell and a co-managed program managed or powered by experts, we even have Andrea from Marketopia helping to power some of this stuff. We bring and assemble the best people to be able to sit in front of your CEO and clients and explain what business continuity is, what cybersecurity is, in a way that helps them understand what their trade-offs are, what their payoffs are, and what to do. How do we do business in this new kind of digital economy if we're not extending each other's teams, right? Mr. James, talk to me a little bit about, in our audience, about testing and measuring. How does one do that?
Well, I really enjoyed the part of your keynote this morning where you talked about the NIST framework. I'm a big fan of that. I remember writing an ebook a little while ago at Acronis that talks about using a NIST-like framework to assess your technology providers to make sure that they're doing everything they can do to prevent themselves from becoming a link in a software supply chain attack. Right? We all know some of those bad attacks that have happened over the past couple of years. And it immediately brought to mind a colleague of mine, Andrew Jakewith, when he and I were analysts covering security at the Yankee Group a few years ago. He's written one of the great textbooks used for cybersecurity undergraduates called Security Metrics. And to paraphrase him, you cannot know what you do not measure. And we're big believers of that at Acronis, and there's a couple of reasons for it. One, there's the technical reason. You do something like take a prospect's CyberFit score, and you're basically doing a kind of a back-of-the-envelope vulnerability assessment. And you can say, look, these are areas that we need to shore up. These are areas where your data is not as effectively protected as it might be. Here are a number of things that concrete action steps that we can take to reduce your risk in these specific areas. The other side of that it calls to mind what one of our other keynotes, Jennifer of Galactic, talked about right before lunch, which is it's a tremendous sales tool. You want to get into the business of being a risk management partner to your clients, not just someone who's like, I'm going to do backup for you. I'm going to manage your endpoint anti-malware. It's like, no, we're in the business of reducing your risk, and in the same way that we do it for ourselves, again, this notion of community becomes really important when, in a world of potential supply chain attacks, we all could be the weakest link, including us as providers. So to be able to have that conversation, that risk management-oriented conversation, is a tremendous sales tool and something that you should be doing not only with prospects, but periodically with your existing clients to say, let's go back and assess, let's see where we are. Let's iterate on this process of assessing your vulnerability to risk, and we will manage that on your behalf. That gets you in a much better place, I think, when it comes time, for instance, to have a renewal discussion.
I think that was very well put. It reminds me of, you said the magic word, risk management, right? And what we have learned about a supply chain is that a partner of ours, you, the TSP, absorbs your end client's risk, right? Your expectation is that supply chain absorbs your risk. So we have a chained risk management strategy in place when it comes to cybersecurity, when it comes to business continuity. And the thing that measures that risk are things like the CyberFit score, things like assessments and vulnerability management, right? Things that are important to that supply chain's journey, like NIST as an example, right? So all of these things have an important place in managing and aligning to business continuity. Esteban. Talk to us a little bit about your journey with NOC and SOC.
So one of the most important things to us as a managed services provider, technology services provider, at least to me as a business owner, is to not have to go through growing pains every time we have customers, every time that we have a new customer. We have great, I guess, efforts right now going on to get new customers. My pain on the backside of somebody who's doing sales for us would have been we get a new 200, 300 seat customer, and that's probably our sweet spot. My pain is, can I handle that, and how quickly can I handle that, and how do I staff for that? What kind of expertise do I need for that? So what our partnerships have allowed us to do is to use managed services to go down the supply chain and say, well, we don't have to staff for it, except obviously there's going to be a shim there somewhere where, yes, we have to staff for managing that partnership. But for the most part, we can take on a customer right now that's 500, 300, 750, whatever size customer. And the most important part, going to the risk factor, is that just like the customer is putting the risk off on us, I also want to sleep at night. I don't want to be the business owner, the technology partner owner that has to stay up at night. I don't want my technicians necessarily to do that either. But as they say, it rolls downhill. So it's the customers putting it off on us. We're putting it off on our own technicians, but without having to staff in a grand way every time we have more of a need. We're putting it off then on our partners that are manning the SOC and the NOC. The most important thing there is for us to manage that relationship. And I think that's where it's really allowed us to have that growth that we wouldn't be able to have otherwise. We were talking earlier, how many colleagues of ours have we had that got some really good customers, and 6 months later we're struggling because they had a staff of 50 or 60 all of a sudden, and things went a little bit south, and now we're in a bad spot. So for us, we have that comfort level, so that partnership, that having the SOC, having the NOC, having all the managed services has really helped us to continue with the business and grow it.
Yep. So a little fact about Esteban, he came from the continuum side. So ConnectWise had a strategy that we believe the world was going to be, in terms of managed services, in 3 arenas. The do-it-yourselfers, right? Take the products, bring it in-house. Some folks have the talent to do that and deliver those services in a do-it-yourself manner. There were also arenas where there was a done-for-you. You didn't have the skill set to do it. It was harder to find labor, so let an organization that is equipped and built to find those services and those people that can deliver those services and work as an extension of your team. Yeah, done for you. Here's where we think the world is going to move to when it comes to the future of technology service providing. We think it's going to be a done with you world, right? This is the embodiment of a transformative partnership, right? I'm going to transparently give Esteban our standard operating procedures so he can have confidence that, okay, this is how the SOC operates. This is what they do in this scenario. This is what the NOC does in this scenario, as an extension of his team, so there's skin in the game. So we're not saying, here's a product, good luck, see you later, and your terms of service will negate us from any liabilities and services and stuff like that. No, the idea is, what is the skin in the game for a partnership-oriented company to be an extension of Esteban's team, right? And Acronis is an exemplar of that because they power some of our NOC services as well, right? And then as Mike Goldberg mentioned, how do we create more programs where we are extensions of your team doing it with you, right? There's the future world that we see, and that's what we're going to engineer business continuity thinking around. So I'm going to go off script a little bit here because I don't know that I let the team know that I was going to take questions from the crowd. So does anybody have a question for Esteban? And there's a mic runner over here, 2 mic runners. And James and Mike Goldberg on any of those things that we talked about. I know, it's afternoon. Everybody's a little, transformative partnerships, stack alignment, community, plan and selling, testing and measuring, tracking and educating, identify, protect, detect, respond, recover. No? Going once? Going twice? Okay, if I were you, here's the questions that I would ask. Mike Goldberg, if you were to impart on our peers a habit to form or reform, what would that be?
You said a habit? There's
A habit.
A habit.
Yeah, a habit.
I'm going to answer your question with a question. And the question is back to the guys that were not raising their hand a second ago. So hopefully, maybe nobody raises their hand again, but maybe you will. Who in this room excels at answering RFPs? All right. So now I don't know if you guys are just not raising your hand to mess with me, but nobody raised their hand. So I would say the one habit is, if you could bring back one habit going forward, do not answer RFPs. Generally speaking, I have not heard very much success in that, and I would reframe it as my suggestion of the new habit. When they come to you and ask you for an RFP to fill it out, our natural inclination, especially in sales, is absolutely, because there's revenue associated to it. The reframe is, send me the RFP and I'm going to look at it. And then when you get back to them, you say, respectfully, we're not going to answer it because I believe you have a few gaps that you have not identified in this RFP. But what I would be more than happy to do is take you through those gaps and help you reshape the RFP to have a more successful outcome. And the outcome, generally speaking, in that reframe and re-education is now you are steering the conversation because somebody else steered it on that first RFP. You are now steering that conversation to allow yourself to win that business a lot more successfully.
Here's why that is important, that one habit, because it's connected to something. You are no longer a trusted advisor to your end clients. Erase that term from your minds. You are a business consultant to your end clients. You are the VCISO, you are the VCIO. You have a seat at the table when it comes to this thing called the digital economy. So you're not answering them, you're shaping their view of how to get the most out of the digital economy as a business consultant. Maybe there's a different word for it, but I can tell you what it's not. It's not the trusted advisor. You become a system of trust when you become a business consultant that has a seat at the table. I said this in my talk earlier. That is the one thing no platform person like myself will ever try to build. You cannot commoditize that relationship. You cannot commoditize that system of trust. I cannot commoditize that with Esteban. I can't go direct and commoditize that. They trust Esteban. I can amplify that by being an extension of Esteban's team, a colleague of Biz IT support and security, reshaping RFPs that come our way and saying, whoever built this for you or wherever you Googled it from has all these single points of failure. Let me tell you what the network of end clients that subscribe to our business model benefit from. Network effect, right? James, there is one habit that you can impart upon our peers.
Well, first off, Tony, thank you for not asking me that one first, because all I would have been able to come up with something my dad taught me, which was always use shoe trees. Really extend the life of your shoes by years. So you prevent that crease from getting across the instep. No, while Mike was talking, I had a chance to think about this, and the thing that immediately came to mind by way of a story is Stuxnet. So you may remember Stuxnet as probably the first widely known advanced persistent threat attack. I was an industry analyst at the time covering network security, and the research community was absolutely floored when we first got a glimpse at this giant piece of malware that had escaped into the wild. It wasn't supposed to be exposed. And as we learned more and more about it, we came to understand that this was part of a multi-stage attack where they first got into the network by dropping the parking lot of the Iranian nuclear reactors, and the engineers took them in and plugged them in. And that initial malware that got in just did surveillance very stealthily for weeks. They got the lay of the land, They went, meanwhile, the NSA and its partners in Israeli intelligence were some software that would hop through the network and cause the Iranian uranium refiners to spin out of control and destroy themselves. And they actually had to accelerate the attack when it looked like the Iranians were starting to figure out that something was amiss, that this behavior wasn't random. But it effectively set the program back about 10 years. And at the time, we were like advising our clients, you don't have to really worry about this because this is only a nation-state on nation-state kind of attack. Only the NSA and its counterparts around the world have the patience, the resources, and the ability to pay for the best cyber expertise on the market to mount these kind of stealthy, months-long kind of attacks involving long-term surveillance and custom malware and so forth. Well, that's just not true anymore. We're now in an age where commercial cyber criminals, people are in it just for the gain. They're not, trying to gain geopolitical advantage with their rivals on the world stage. They're just in it for money. But they have the sophistication. They have these kind of attacks. I alluded to tech supply chain attacks before. To assault a popular software vendor's software repository, get into their upcoming software distribution with bug fixes and feature updates, and have it digitally signed and then distributed to 100,000 customers just for the ability to surveil and steal data. That's purely done for profit. And that's something that we all have to worry about. What that suggests to me from a perspective of forming good habits is never believe that you have found every single point of failure. Again, Tony really underscored this beautifully in his keynote this morning, that you have to continuously look for single points of failure and never kid yourself that you found every one of them, because there is somebody with more resources that you have, and they are operating in a country beyond the extradition reach of your customers, your clients, and yourself. So if you are not diligent and if you're not constantly reviewing and keeping abreast, taking advantage of threat intelligence from your vendors, if you're not thinking about things like EDR so that you can get into the some level of threat hunting, then you're not doing everything that you could from a kind of a good habit standpoint to do the best for yourselves and your clients.
Well said. I think the moral of that story and a consequence of that habit is we have to realize that we are moving through this digital economy as one coherent and cohesive supply chain, right? We can't separate ourselves from each other. What happens to one happens to all of us. We learned that during COVID, by the way. When SMBs were hitting the floor, they weren't paying MSPs, and we as ConnectWise and others said, we get it, we understand the sell-through motion that's happening here, let's just weather the storm together and then figure out how to operate again as a coherent, cohesive supply chain. That is the definition of a transformative partnership. You are part of the same supply chain. Esteban, 30 plus years of experience. I'm sure you have seen many things. If there was time for 20 habits, I'm sure you can fill that time, but what's the one you want to impart on your peers?
And you have to keep harping on the 30 years, right?
Wisdom. It's in our name, ConnectWise, so we have a very...
I would say, and not to make light of this, but one of the first things is to develop habits. From the geek side, remember my title says CTO, I'm the technical guy, right? Or that's basically my role. But I think we tend to be interrupt-driven to begin with, so having those habits, I think, is very important. So what habits would I recommend? One, at this level, in a very holistic way, as opposed to talking specifically about security, but managing the partnership, managing the relationship, is monitor everything. Monitor your relationship with your staff, monitor their relationship with the partners and with other vendors, and hold everybody accountable. And if I make that my job, then I shouldn't have to get involved in the 2 o'clock in the morning, getting up at night and making sure that everything was done properly. Because to the it's kind of painful at the beginning, but to the extent that I've held my team accountable and I have them hold the teams downstream accountable and all of the relationships are accountable, and we continue to have conversations about what the relationships are, that's what lets me sleep. And that's what, when I sit in front of a customer, lets me tell them that they should sleep also. Okay, so
That's a wonderful form of absorbing your client's risk, us making sure we absorb your risk, and I think most importantly, it keeps you as a business owner working on the business, not in the business.
Exactly.
And that's ultimately what it means to be transformative in terms of a partnership, right? Now, the reason why I asked these fine gentlemen to talk to you guys about habits, there's a great book out there called Atomic Habits by James Clear. Happens to be the headliner keynote speaker at IT Nation this week in Orlando. There's a lot of value that us as a service industry can get from that type of mindset and that type of thinking. Atomic meaning small habit. You have to look and audit your small habits, reform or institute new habits. There's also another keynote speaker by the name she wrote Radical Candor. What's her name, Mike?
I went blank.
I forgot it. Look at that.
Only we had a way to
I
look
blanked
this
out.
up.
She's also a keynote speaker at IT Nation Connect. But having candor with your partnerships, your end clients, because there's some people that you're going to have to fire because they're not willing to sign up for that risk management objective that you have, right? Kim Scott, that's her name. I knew it would come to me. There it is. And there's also a conversation full of candor that you have to have with the platform partnerships that you have, the program partnerships that you have, and the software partnerships that you have when it comes to this supply chain thinking, right? So I'll leave you with that as a couple of words for wisdom. We'll be around the rest of the day if you have any more questions about blast zone engineering, habits, do it yourself, done for you and done with you. And we thank you for your time, and you guys especially as well.
Thank you.